All praise to the great Elohim of Israel. And I want to say shalom and blessings to everybody in the chat. Hope all is well and good. I want to welcome you to this part one of the reading from the Book of Judith. And you can find this book in the Apocryphal books. I want to welcome everybody who's streaming or looking in rather on the Readers channel. I'm actually streaming on two channels tonight, the Beginners channel and the Readers channel. And I'm going to do this for a while to sort of get people acclimated to transitioning over to the Readers channel. And like I said before, that channel is where we'll be doing mostly reading. And then the Beginners channel where we'll just fellowship and chop it up like how we do. But in any case, hope all is well. Hope everybody had a pretty good day. I know the Most High has blessed us to see another day. We're all alive. We're all well. We're all in good health. Some people are a little under the weather, but that happens during this time of year, transitioning over. The Book of Judith, like I said, it's an apocryphal book. And what we're going to be doing tonight is just sort of reading the history of what took place during this particular time. Some people question the validity of this record. But nonetheless, when you do the research on the validity of it, as always, scholars are uncertain on a lot of things. And that's pretty much with a lot of the records. So with us, it's about the information within the record. And does it line up? Does it edify? That kind of thing. But before we start, I want to remind everybody, hit the like button and the subscribe button, as well as the notification bells. That way you'll be alerted when we go live or when we drop a video. So we're going to get started. This is part one, the Book of Judith, chapter 1. It says, in the 12th year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, who reigned in Nineveh, the great city, in the days of Arpachshad, which reigned over the Medes in Ecbatane, and built in Ecbatane walls round about of stones, hewn 3 cubits broad and 6 cubits long, and made the height of the wall 70 cubits, and the breadth thereof 50 cubits, and set the towers thereof upon the gates of it 100 cubits high, and the breadth thereof in the foundation 80 cubits. And he made the gates thereof even gates that raised to the height of 70 cubits, and the breadth of them was 40 cubits, for the going forth of his mighty armies, and for the setting in array of his footmen. Even in those days, King Nebuchadnezzar made war with King Arpachshad in the great plain, which is in the plain in the borders of Ragu. And there came unto him all they that dwelt in the hill country, and all that dwelt by Euphrates and Tigris and Hydaspes, and the plain of Arioch, the king of Elamines, and very many nations of the sons of Kilad assembled themselves to battle. Then Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Asherim, sent unto all that dwelt in Persia, and to all that dwelt westward, and to those that dealt in Cilicia, and Damascus, I think that's Damascus, Lebanon, and Tilibanus, and to all that dwelt upon the sea coast, and to those among the nations that were of Carmel and Gilad, and the higher Galilah, and the great plain Yisrael, and to all that were in Shomron and the cities thereof, and beyond Yarden and Jerusalem, and Betane and Kelos and Kadesh, and the river of Mitzrayim, and Tophanes and Ramses and all the land of Goshen. Verse 10, until you come beyond Tanis and Memphis, and to all the inhabitants of Mizraim, until you come to the borders of Cush. But all the inhabitants of the land made light of the commandment of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians. Neither went they with him to the battle, for they were not afraid of him. Yea, he was before them as one man, and they sent away his ambassadors from them without effect and with disgrace. So the setup is basically Nebuchadnezzar made war with Arpachshad, and long story short, Arpachshad and his allies got ready for the battle against Nebuchadnezzar. But when Nebuchadnezzar called on his allies, nobody came to fight with him or to represent him or to stand with him. They made light of him, and they made light of his ambassadors. All right, so now he's a little upset about that. They said they looked at him as one man, right? And they sent away his ambassadors from them without effect and with disgrace. So now Nebuchadnezzar has to go to war on his own. Let's look at how that turns out. Therefore, Nebuchadnezzar was very angry with all this country and sware by his throne and kingdom that he would surely be avenged upon all those coasts of Cilicia and Damascus and Aram, and that he would slay with the sword all the inhabitants of the land of Moab and the children of Ammon and all Yehudah and all that were in Egypt or Mitzrayim till ye come to the borders of the two seas. All right, so now he's like, okay, when I'm done with this, I'm going to come and be avenged on all of these nations that turned me down when I turned to them or called on them to fight with me. Since then he marched in battle array with his power against King Arpachshad in the 17th year, and he prevailed in his battle, for he overthrew all the power of Arpachshad and all his horsemen and all his chariots, and became Adon of his cities, or Lord, and came unto Ecbatane and took the towers, and spoiled the streets thereof, and turned the beauty thereof into shame. And he took also Arpachshad in the mountains of Ragu, and smote him through with his darts, and destroyed him utterly that day. So he returned afterward to Nineveh, both he and all his company of sundry nations, being a very great multitude of men of war. And there he took his ease and banqueted, both he and his army, 120 days. So he went to war with Arpachshad without the nation's assistance, overcame him in battle, and now he's kicking back with his feet up. All right, he took the king and killed him, which was customary. Whenever you conquered a nation, you went to war and you captured their king, you put their king to death, and their kingdoms and all their subjects became your subjects. So now he's kicking back. All right. It says in chapter 2, and in the 18th year, the 22nd day of the first month, there was talk in the house of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, that he should, as he said, avenge himself on all the earth. All right, so now, after a while, some time passed by, it said that talk in the house of Nebuchadnezzar, there was talk in his house that he should avenge himself on all the earth like he said he would. All right, so now he's being stirred up to do what he said he was going to do. So he called unto him all his officers and all his nobles, and communicated with them his secret counsel, and concluded the afflicting of the whole earth out of his own mouth. Then they decreed to destroy all flesh that did not obey the commandment out of his mouth. And when he had ended his counsel, Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrian, called Holofernes, the chief captain of his army, which was next unto him, and said unto him, Thus said the great king, the Adon of the whole earth, Behold, thou shalt go forth from my presence and take with thee men that trust in their own strength, right? Go out into the whole earth. Behold, thou shalt go forth from my presence and take with thee men that trust in their own strength, of footmen 120,000, and the number of horses with their riders 12,000. And thou shalt go against all the west country, because they disobeyed my commandment. And thou shalt declare unto that they prepare meat for me, earth and water. For I will go forth in my wrath against them, and will cover the whole face of the earth with the feet of my army. And I will give them for a spoil unto them. Right? You know, it's funny because you'll hear people judge the Most High for things that's written in the Bible that he did when he destroyed nations, or when he brought recompense on nations for whatever they did in the past to his people. But what is Nebuchadnezzar doing right here? All right. Maybe it's the nature of rulership to recompense anybody that go against their command. But we serve the God of gods, as we would commonly put it. 8, it says, so that their slain shall fill their valleys and brooks, and the rivers shall be filled with their dead till it overflow. And I will lead them captives to the uttermost parts of all the earth. Thou therefore shalt go forth and take beforehand for me all their coast. And if they will yield themselves unto thee, thou shalt reserve them for me till the day of their punishment. But concerning them that rebel, let not thine eye spare them, but put them to the slaughter, and spoil them wheresoever thou goest. Right, so this is what he's commanded his general to do. Go throughout all these nations and destroy these nations. Right? And the nations that yield themselves to you, reserve those nations. Right? But the nations that rebelled against you, don't spare those nations, put them to the slaughter, and spoil them wheresoever thou goest. For as I live, and by the power of my kingdom, whatsoever I have spoken, that will I do by mine hand. And take thou heed that thou transgress none of the commandments of thy Adon, but accomplish them fully, as I have commanded thee, and defer not to do them. All right. So I'm going to scroll up real quick. I'm reading from a Hebrew version of the Bible, and it sort of have pictures in it. So this is a picture of Judith. You know, this is a more contemporary representation. But in any case, we're looking at a historically accurate representation. All right. So now King Nebuchadnezzar commanded his general to go out and destroy all these nations for the purpose of fulfilling the commandment that he gave him, or the reason he sent them out is because the nations didn't follow his command to come and help him to go to war. And so now he's sending his general out, and he's putting a decree on him to don't fall short of fulfilling what I'm telling you to do. All right. If you know anything about those medieval movies, when you had kings and rulers and they sent generals out, you know, they sent them out and they told them don't Don't come back without accomplishing what I sent you out to accomplish. It says, then Holofernes went forth from the presence of his Adon and called El the governors and the captains and the officers of the army of Ashur. And he mustered the chosen men for the battle, as his Adon had commanded him, unto 120,000, and 12,000 archers on horseback. And he ranged them as a great army is ordered for the war. And he took camels and asses for their carriages, a very great number, and sheep and oxen and goats without number for their provision, and plenty of victual for every man of the army, and very much gold and silver out of the king's house. Then he went forth in all his power to go before the king Nebuchadnezzar in the voyage, and to cover all the face of the earth westward with their chariots and horsemen and their chosen footmen. A great number also, sundry countries, came with them like locusts, and like the sand of the earth, for the multitude was without number. Now you see that it's a great number of nations coming to join him in this journey. And it says, and they went forth to Nineveh 3 days' journey toward the plain of Bicteleth, and pitched from Bicteleth near the mountain which is at the left hand of Upper Cilicia. Then he took all his army, his footmen and horsemen and chariots, and went from thence into the hill country, and destroyed Food and Lud, and spoiled all the children of Rases, and the children of Israel, which were toward the wilderness at the south of the land of the Kilianim. All right, so you had Israelites in these regions. It says, then he went over Euphrates and went through Mesopotamia and destroyed all the high cities that were upon the river Arbonate, till ye come to the sea. And he took the borders of Cilicia and killed all that resisted him, and came to the borders of Japhet, which were toward the south over against Arabia. He compassed also all the children of Midian, and burned up their tabernacles and spoiled their sheepcotes. Then he went down into the plain of Damascus in the time of wheat harvest, and burnt up all their fields and destroyed their flocks and herds. Also, he spoiled their cities and utterly wasted their countries, and smote all their young men with the edge of the sword. Therefore, the fear and dread of him fell upon all the inhabitants of the seacoast, which were in Zidon and Zoar, and them that dwelt in Sur and Osina, and all that dwelt in Yimnaan, and they that dwelt in Ashdod and Ashkelon feared him greatly. All right, so King Nebuchadnezzar is setting out to do what he said he was going to do, which is avenge all the nations that went against his command to come and assist him in war. And now we see that his general is doing that. He's making his mark. And now pretty much all the nations in the seacoast are aware of him and they're afraid. All right, so now let's see what happens here. This is all the setup that's leading to Judith coming on the scene. All right. So they sent ambassadors unto him to treat of peace, saying, behold, we the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, the great king, lie before thee. Use us as shall be good in thy sight. Behold, our houses and all our places, and all our fields of wheat and flocks and herds, and all the lodges of our tents lie before thy face. Use them as it pleaseth thee. Behold, even our cities and the inhabitants thereof are thy servants. Come and deal with them as seemeth good unto thee. All right, so they pretty much giving up everything, yielding everything over to them, right? So the men came to Holofernes and declared unto him after this matter. Then came he down toward the sea coast, both he and his army, and set garrisons in the high cities, and took out of them chosen men for aid. So they and all the country round about received them with garlands, with dances, and with timbrels. All right, so they making sure they stand on their good side. They welcome them with a celebration, right? Yet he did cast down their frontiers and cut down their groves. So even though they celebrating them coming in, trying to appease them, he still did what he came to do. He tore down their frontiers, cut down their groves, just like Nebuchadnezzar told him. For he had decreed to destroy all the Elohim of the land, that all nations should worship Nebuchadnezzar only, and that all tongues and tribes should call upon him as Elohim. Right? Also, he came over against Yisrael near unto Judah, over against the great strait of Yehuda. And he pitched between Gabah and Synthopolis. And there he tarried a whole month, that he might gather together all the carriages of his army. So now he done set up shop outside of the city of Judah. All right. He done made his way to the chosen people, to the chosen city. So let's see how this pans out. Now that he's going through destroying, setting up shop, the nations who rebel, they destroyed, killed them off, and the nations who yielded, he spared them, right? So now he's reached Judah. Now the children of Israel that dwelt in Yehuda heard all that Holofernes, the chief captain of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Asherim, had done to the nations, and after what manner he had spoiled all their temples and brought them to naught. Therefore they were exceedingly afraid of him. All right. The fame of Nebuchadnezzar going out, the word reached our people, and now they're afraid, right? And were troubled for Jerusalem and for the temple of Yahuwah their Elohim, for they were newly returned from the captivity, and all the people of Yehuda were lately gathered together, and the vessels and the altar and the house were sanctified after the profanation. Therefore they sent into all the coast of Shamron and the villages and to Beth Karan and Balim and Jericho and to Kobah and Esora and to the valley of Salam, and possessed themselves beforehand of all the tops of the high mountains, and fortified the villages that were in them, and laid up victuals for the provision of war, for their fields were of late reaped. Also Jehoiakim the high priest, which was in those days in Jerusalem, wrote to them that dwelt in Beth Oliah, and Beto Mestam, which is over against Yisrael toward the open country near Dothaim, charging them to keep the passages of the hill country, for by them there was an entrance into Judah, and it was easy to stop them that would come up, because the passage was straight for 2 men at the most. All right, so now they're afraid. They're trying to figure out how they're going to prepare and fortify the city, right? And they remember a passageway up to the city that leads to the city, and he's telling them to keep the passages of the hill country, right? So in other words, keep your eye on that, because You know, if somebody find that way, you can get out and you can get in that way, but it's only two people at a time can go because it was a narrow path, like a narrow passageway to enter into and out of the city. All right. But they're trying to figure out what to do now that they got wind of Nebuchadnezzar's army reaching the city. They're afraid. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And the children of Israel did as Jehoiakim the high priest had commanded them, with the ancients of all the people of Israel, which dwelt at Jerusalem. Every man of Israel cried to Elohim with great fervency, and with great vehemency did they humble their souls. So now they crying out to the Most High, both they and their wives and their children and their cattle, and every stranger and hireling, and their servants bought with money, put sackcloth upon their loins. All right, so not only the Israelites, it said the cattle, and even the strangers was crying out to the Most High with sackcloth. They in a desperate position right now. Thus every man and woman and the little children and the inhabitants of Jerusalem fell before the temple and cast ashes upon their heads and spread out their sackcloth before the face of Yahweh. Also, they put sackcloth about the altar and cried to Elohim of Israel, all with one consent earnestly, that he would not give their children for a prey, and their wives for a spoil, and the cities of their inheritance to destruction, and the sanctuary to profanation and reproach, and for the Gentiles to rejoice at. All right, so now they're crying out to the Most High to not allow them to be destroyed by the enemies. Long story short, because when your enemies destroy you, that encompasses everything. They take all your possessions. You know, in most cases, they kill all the men off and spare the women and the children. Right? They destroy your cities, ravage your cities, and leave you with nothing. And they're saying that they don't want this to happen to them. So now they're crying out. So Elohim heard their prayers and looked upon their afflictions. For the people fasted many days, and all Judah and Jerusalem before the sanctuary of Yahweh Almighty. And I think sometimes as we examine these records, and even in the scripture, when we look at situations like this is sort of giving us a playbook or a rundown of what they did in times of need. You know, how they were all on one accord and they cried out to the Most High. And I also think that that's why the enemy is doing a good job of keeping us separated as a people. It could be a combination of that, and it could also be a combination of something the Most High may be doing strategically. But in any case, when we are on one accord and we cry out to the Most High, we see that the Most High will hear our prayer, right? Just like here and just like in many other places. It said for the people fasted. All right, so this is just giving us an idea of what to do to reach the Most High, mimic what our forefathers and ancestors did when they were in trouble. It says, and Jehoiakim the high priest and all the priests that stood before Yahweh, and they which ministered unto Yahweh had their loins girt with sackcloth, and offered the daily burnt offerings with the vows and free gifts of the people, and had ashes on their mitres, and cried unto Yahweh with all their power, that he would look upon all the house of Israel graciously. All right, I'm going to take a quick pause for the cause. When we come back, we're going to continue. All right, so now we're at a point where our people on a desperate situation. Nebuchadnezzar's army, which is under his general's command, have made their way to the city of Judah. They've put the other nations in fear. And now our people are crying out to the Most High. Now remember, Nebuchadnezzar told his general to pick out men who trust in their own power. All right, so keep that in mind. We're going to pick it up where we left off when we come back. Shalom.
What up, B? What up, B? What up, B?
If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to both the Beginners channel and the Readers channel. Also, visit truehebrew.com, freshest Hebrew brand in the land. I want to thank everybody who has visited the site and given us feedback. It's truehebrew.com. I also put the link to the Readers channel, rather. I put the link in the chat because I believe if you try to search for the channel and the algorithm, it'll be hard to find. So for those who want to subscribe to it, go ahead and click the link in the chat and subscribe to the Readers channel, as well as subscribing to the Beginners channel. I want to thank y'all in advance for that. So We're going to get back to where we were. We're in the book of Judith, and we're in the 5th chapter. All right. Nebuchadnezzar has sent his generals out to fulfill his decree of having vengeance on all the nations who turned him down when he called on them to fight. And he's accomplishing that. And now he's reached Judah. All right. And as always, when our people are in trouble and they have the presence of mind, they call on the Most High, and the Most High hears their prayer. So now let's see what happens in response to that moving forward. We're in the 5th chapter, verse 1. It says, "Then was it declared to Holofernes, the chief captain of the army of Ashur, that the children of Israel had prepared for war." Remember, they started fortifying the city. So now word has gotten back to Holofernes that Israel has prepared for war and had shut up the passages of the hill country and had fortified all the tops of the high hills and laid impediments in the campaign countries. So you remember what Nebuchadnezzar told him, that any nation that rebels, to don't let your eyes spare them. So now they're in that regard pretty much at this point with him. It says, "Wherewith he was very angry and called all the princes of Moab and the captains of Ammon and all the governors of the seacoasts." Right? If you go look at Psalms, the 83rd chapter, you will see that these are among the nations who are confederate against Israel. Moab and Ammon. All right. It says in verse 3, "And he said unto them, Tell me now, ye sons of Canaan, who is this people is that dwelleth in the hill country? And what are the cities that they inhabit? And what is the multitude of their army? And wherein is their power and strength? And what king is over them? What king is set over them, or captain of their army? And why have they determined not to come to meet me more than all the inhabitants of the west?" Right, so now he's inquiring about these people. You know, what basically, who are these people? Who is their leader? You know, do they have a large army? Right? What cities do they occupy? And why have they not come out and humbled themselves before us like the rest of the inhabitants of the west? Right? Or it says more than all the inhabitants of the west. Then said Achior, the captain of all the sons of Ammon, "Let Adonai now hear a word from the mouth of thy servant, and I will declare unto thee the truth concerning this people, which dwelleth near thee, and inhabited the hill countries, and there shall no lie come out of the mouth of thy servant. This people are descendants of the Casdim, and they sojourn heretofore in Mesopotamia, because they would not follow the Elohim of their fathers, which were in the land of Kadisma. For they left the way of their ancestors and worshiped the Elohims of heaven, the Elohim who they knew. So they cast them out from the face of their Elohim, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days." All right. So he's letting them know these are a people who dwelt in the land of Mesopotamia, right, in the region of Mesopotamia, and they were kicked out because they disobeyed the God of their forefathers, for they left the way of their ancestors and worshiped the Elohim of heaven, the Elohim whom they knew. So they cast them out from the face of their Elohim, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days. Then their Elohim commanded them to depart from the place where they sojourned and to go into the land of Canaan, where they dwelt, and were increased with gold and silver and with very much cattle. Talking about, all the time from Egypt leading up from that point. And when a famine covered all the land of Canaan, they went down into Egypt and sojourned there while they nourished and became there a great multitude, so that one could not number their nation. So he's basically giving him the history from Abraham leading up to them becoming a nation. Therefore, the king of Egypt rose up against them and dwelt subtly with them and brought them low with laboring and brick and made them slaves. Then they cried unto their Elohim, and he smote all the land of Egypt with incurable plagues. So the Mizraim cast them out of their sight, and Elohim dried the Red Sea before them and brought them to Mount Sinai and Kadesh Barnea, and cast forth all that dwelt in the wilderness. So they dwelt in the land of the Emorym, and they destroyed by their strength all them of Esbon, and passing over Jordan, they possessed all the hill country. And they cast forth before them the Cananim, the Perizim, the Jebusim, and the Shikmim, and all the Girgashim, and they dwelt in that country many days. And whilst they sinned not before the Elohim, they prospered, because the Elohim that hated iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles very sore, and were led captives into a land that was not theirs. And the temple of their Elohim was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies. Once again, it's like giving you a playbook, right? Even certain people from other nations understood that when we obeyed the commandments, that we were in favor with the Most High at that point. But when we went against the commandments, went against the things that he commanded us, then we fell short in battles. We lost wars. We went in captivity, right? It says, but now are they turned to their Elohim, and are come up from the places where they were scattered, and have possessed Jerusalem with their sanctuary, where their sanctuary is, and are seated in the hill country, for it was desolate. Now therefore, Adoni and governor, if there be any error against his people, and they sin against their Elohim, let us consider that this shall be their ruin, and let us go up, and we shall overcome them. But if there be no iniquity in their nation, let Adoni now pass by, lest their Elohim defend them, and their Elohim be for them, and we become a reproach before all the world. In other words, if they right with the Most High, don't bother them, don't fool with them. But if they ain't right with the Most High, you might have a chance. You can try them out. You can test them out, right? And when Achior had finished these sayings, all the people standing round about the tent murmured. And the chief men of Holofernes and all that dwelt by the sea side and in Moab spake that he should kill him, right? So after he told them, he said, I'm going to tell you the truth. He told them everything. Now everybody else trying to get him killed because they all trying to find favor with the general. For say they, we will not be afraid of the face of the children of Israel. For lo, it is a people that have no strength nor power for a strong battle. Now, what is that telling you? Why do you think a lot of the nations treat us the way that they do now? You know, they're not really afraid of anything because they know that we're not fortified and we're not equipped to defend ourselves. We don't have the means to defend ourselves. Right. He says, now therefore, Adon Holofernes, we will go up, and they shall be a prey to be devoured of all thine army. And when the multitude of men that were about the council was ceased, Holofernes, the chief captain of the army of Ashur, said unto Achior and all the Moabim before all the company of other nations, and who art thou, Achior, and the hirelings of as it is to this day, as today, and has said that, I skipped the whole part, I'm sorry. And who art thou, Achior, and the hirelings of Ephraim, that thou hast prophesied against us as today, and hast said that we should not make war with the people of Israel, because their Elohim will defend them. And who is Elohim but Nebuchadnezzar? All right. Who are you to prophesy against the general, against Nebuchadnezzar, for this people Israel, telling them not to go up against Israel? Right. And who is Elohim but Nebuchadnezzar? This is what they're saying. He will send his power and will destroy them from the face of the earth, and their Elohim shall not deliver them. This is what they're saying. But we, his servants, will destroy them as one man, for they are not able to sustain the power of our horses. But with them we will tread them underfoot, and their mountains shall be drunken with their blood, and their fields shall be filled with their dead bodies, and their footsteps shall not be able to stand before us, for they shall utterly perish, said King Nebuchadnezzar, Adon of all the earth. For he said, none of my words shall be in vain. And thou, Achior, and hireling of Ammon, which hast spoken these words in the day of thine iniquity, shall see my face no more from this day, until I take vengeance of this nation that came out of Egypt. And then shall the sword of mine army and the multitude of them that serve me pass through thy sides, and thou shalt fall among their slain when I return. So he told a dude that warned him about Israel, basically, that who are you to prophesy, say, tell us not to go up against Israel, right? Get out of my face. You ain't gonna see my face no more until we defeat them. And the next time you see me, I'm gonna have my soldiers kill you, basically, is what he's telling him. Right? It says, now therefore my servants shall bring thee back into the hill country, and shall set thee in one of the cities of the passages, and thou shalt not perish till thou be destroyed with them. And if thou persuade thyself in thy mind that they shall be taken, let not thy countenance fall. I have spoken it, and none of my words shall be in vain. Then Holofernes commanded his servants that waited in his tent to take Achior and bring him to Beth Ulia and deliver him into the hands of the children of Israel. So he said, I'm gonna put you among them, and I'm gonna let you be destroyed with them. Right? So his servants took him and brought him out of the camp in the plain, and they went from the midst of the plain into the hill country, and came unto the fountains that were under Beth Oya. And when the men of the city saw them, they took up their weapons and went out of the city to the top of the hill. And every man that used the sling kept them from coming up by casting up stones against them. So they trying to bring him up. And while they trying to bring him up, they already fighting against him, trying to keep him from coming up. Nevertheless, having gotten privily under the hill, they bound Achior and cast him down, and left him at the foot of the hill, and returned to their Adon. But the children of Israel descended from their city, and came unto him, and loosed him, and brought him to Beth Oya, and presented him to the governors of the city, which were in those days Uzziah, the son of Milcah of the tribe of Simeon, and Cabris, the son of Cataniel, and Carmis, the son of Malchiel, And they called together all the ancients of the city, and all their youth ran together, and their women to the assembly. And they set Achior in the midst of all their people. Then Uzziah asked him of that which was done. And he answered and declared unto them the words of the counsel of Holofernes, and all the words that he had spoken in the midst of the princes of Ashur. And whatsoever Holofernes had spoken proudly against the house of Israel. Then the people fell down and worshipped Elohim, and cried unto Elohim, saying, O Yahweh Elohim of heaven, behold their pride, and pity the low estate of our nation, and look upon the face of those that are sanctified unto thee this day. Then they comforted Achior and praised him greatly. And Uzziah took him out of the assembly unto his house, and made a feast to the elders, and they called upon the Elohim of Israel all that night for help. So the very dude that Holofernes and that whole camp abandoned, he's among Israel now, warning them of the counsel of Holofernes and everything that he's going to do. Right? So in verse chapter 7, he's warned them of everything he's going to that they're going to do, and now they're praying and praising the Most High and crying out to the Most High. The next day, Holofernes commanded all his army and all his people which will come to take his part, that they should remove their camp against Beth-Oya and take aforehand the ascents of the hill country, and to make war against the children of Israel. All right, so it says it's time to get it on now. I think he's more stirred up now that he's heard the warning of Israel, basically saying that if they in favor with the Most High, if they obeying the Most High, then don't attack them. And he told them that, look, they're pretty much at this point in favor with their God. So you might want to lay low, you know what I mean, on trying to make any moves against them. And he got offended at that because his God is Nebuchadnezzar, right? And it says, then their strong men removed their camps in that day, and the army of the men of war was 170,000 footmen, and 12,000 horsemen beside the baggage, and the other men that were afoot among them, a very great multitude. And they camped in the valley near unto Beth-Oya by the fountain, and they spread themselves in breadth over Dothan, even to Bel-Maim, and in length from Beth-Oya unto Sinamon, which is over against Yisrael. And the children of Israel, when they saw the multitude of them, were greatly troubled, and said every one to his neighbor, now will these men lick up the face of the earth, for neither the high mountains nor the valleys nor the hills are able to bear their weight. Then every man took up his weapons of war, and when they had kindled fires upon their towers, they remained and watched all that night. But in the second day, Holofernes brought forth all his horsemen in the sight of the children of Israel, which were in Beth-Oya, and they viewed the passages up to the city, and came to the fountains of their waters, and took them, and set garrisons of men of war over them. And he himself removed toward his people. Then came unto him all the chiefs of the children of Esau. Right? Excuse me. Then came unto him all the chief of the children of Esau, and all the governors of the people of Moab, and the captains of the seacoast, and said, let our Adon now hear a word, that there be not an overthrow of thine army. For this people of the children of Israel do not trust in their spears, but in the height of the mountains wherein they dwell. For it is not easy to come up to the tops of their mountains. Now therefore, Dawn, fight not against them in battle array, for there shall not so much as one man of thy people perish. Remain in thy camp and keep all the men of thine army, and let thy servants go into their hands. Let thy servants get into their hands the fountain of water, which issueth forth at the foot of the mountain. For all the inhabitants of Beth-Oya have their water thence. And so shall thirst kill them, and they shall give up their city, and we and our people shall go up to the tops of the mountains that are near, and will camp upon them to watch that none go out of the city. All right. So we're going to cut off the water supply to the city. And then we're going to go up to the mountains to make sure that none of them leave out of the city or escape out of the city. This is the chief captains of Esau. It says, so they and their wives and their children shall be consumed with fire. And before the sword come against them, they shall be overthrown in the streets where they dwell. Thus shalt thou render them an evil reward, because they rebelled and met not thy person peaceably. And this is the same thing if you read the book of Obadiah. It said that they did during 70 AD. Of course, they didn't accomplish that within this account. But when you read the book of Obadiah, you see that they accomplished that in 70 AD. And these words pleased Holofernes and all his servants, and he appointed to do as they had spoken. So the camp of the children of Ammon departed, and with them 5,000 of the Asherim. And they pitched in the valley, and took the waters of the fountains of the waters of the children of Israel. Then the children of Esau went up with the children of Ammon, and camped in the hill country over against Dothan. And they sent some of them toward the south, and toward over against Ecrebel, which is near unto Cusi, that is upon the brook Machmor. And the rest of the army of the Asherim camped in the plain, and covered the face of the whole land, and their tents and carriages were pitched to a very great multitude. Then the children of Israel cried unto Yahweh their Elohim, because their heart failed, for all their enemies had compassed them round about, and there was no way to escape out from among them. Thus all the company of Ashur remained about them, both their footmen, chariots, and horsemen, 34 days, so that all their vessels of water filled, all the inhabitants of Beth-Oya, and the cisterns were emptied, and they had not water to drink for their field for one day, for they gave them drink by measure. Therefore their young children were out of heart, and their women and young men fainted for thirst, and fell down in the streets of the city, and by the passages of the gates, and there was no longer any strength in them. Then all the people assembled to Uzziah and to the chief of the city, both young men and women and children, and cried with a loud voice, and said before all the elders, Elohim be judge between us and you, for ye have done us great injury, and that ye have not required peace of the children of Ashur. For now we have no helper, but Elohim have sold us into their hands, that we should be thrown down before them with thirst and great destruction. Now therefore call them unto you, and deliver the whole city for a spoil to the people of Holofernes and to all his army. So now it's gotten so bad that they said, look, we might have to go on and surrender. All right, let's just go on and surrender, because it's that bad now. All right, for it is better for us to be made a spoil unto them than to die of thirst. For we will be his servants, that our souls may live, and not see the death of our infants before our eyes. nor our wives, nor our children to die. Right? We take to witness against you the heaven and the earth, and our Elohim and Yahuwah of our fathers, which punisheth us according to our sins and the sins of our fathers, that he do not according as we have said this day. Then there were great weeping with one consent in the midst of the assembly, and they cried unto Yahuwah Elohim with a loud voice. Then said Uzziah unto them, Brethren, be of good courage, let us yet endure 5 days. So let's wait 5 more days, right? In which space Yahuwah Elohim may turn his mercy toward us, for he will not forsake us utterly. So they said, look, let's hold out a little while longer. All right, let's endure a little bit longer, because the Most High is not going to forsake us. And if these days pass, and there come no help unto us, I will do according to your word. And he dispersed the people, every one to their own charge. And they went unto the walls and towers of their city, and sent the women and children into their houses, and they were very low brought in the city. So now the people have congregated and went to Uzziah and said, look, let's just surrender. All right, it's better for us to surrender and be subject to them than for us to just die in these streets and to see our children dying. Imagine babies dying of thirst and hunger. All right. If you let a baby go long enough without eating, they'll scream your head off. Just imagine them going days without water. Women having to nurture their children, but they not able to get a the sustenance that they need to give out what they need to give to the child. Right. So now it's that bad, and they saying, look, let's just surrender, because it's better for us to die than for us to, it's better for us to serve rather and be subject to them than for us to die after this matter. So I'm going to conclude it right here. This is part 1. Part 2, we're going to pick it up where we left off. And this is where things are going to sort of pick up a little bit when we deal with part 2. But I want to remind everybody to subscribe to both the Beginners channel and the Readers channel as well. Also, visit trueebri.com. I want to thank everybody for your time tonight. Hopefully you can lay down and rest good. A lot of people don't really get to read before they go to bed. A lot of people don't get to read at all, so hopefully this helps out with that. I want to thank everybody once again. Our praises to the Most High, and we'll see you back for part 2 coming soon. Shalom.